Police say 8 women and 31 men found dead in a lorry in the UK were Chinese nationals. The refrigerated container arrived in the east of England from Belgium, where prosecutors have also opened an investigation. Detectives have been given an additional 24 hours to question the driver on suspicion of murder. We're going to be live in Belgium, also Shanghai, and we ask why some people from China are prepared to take such desperate risks. Also on Global, 16 people are sentenced to death for the murder of a student in Bangladesh. They were convicted after Nusrat Jahan Rafi was set on fire for accusing her teacher of sexual harassment. And a dictator's final journey. The body of General Franco is exhumed and reburied. Will it put Spain's fascist past to rest? This is Global. Welcome to Global. Police say 39 people found dead inside a refrigerated lorry in Essex in the east of England are believed to have been Chinese nationals. Officials from the Chinese embassy in London are on their way to help verify their identities. The container had travelled from Zeebrugge in Belgium to Purfleet, a port on the Thames. Detectives have been given an additional 24 hours to question the driver of the lorry, who's been arrested on suspicion of murder. John Kay has the latest.
Remembering 39 strangers. People living near the scene have been reflecting upon the dozens of Chinese nationals found dead just after they arrived in Britain.
Their desperation shows that this society we live in is not right somewhere.
Just think of the people that were in the van, in the lorry, and trying to find a new life and not succeeding, unfortunately.
The Bulgarian-registered lorry and refrigeration trailer have now been driven away from the quiet road where the discovery was made. The police say one by one the 39 bodies will be removed in private and with dignity. 31 men and 8 women. The start of what's likely to be a lengthy and complex identification process. Essex police are still questioning the lorry driver on suspicion of murder. He's been named locally as 25-year-old Mo Robinson from Portadown in County Armagh. 3 properties in Northern Ireland have been searched by police. So what do we know about this week's incident? Well, according to the Belgian authorities, the container arrived in the port of Zeebrugge at about 2:30 on Tuesday afternoon. It left there later that afternoon, heading across the channel. It arrived in Purfleet in Essex just after midnight. And at 1:05 yesterday morning, the trailer was collected by a lorry. About half an hour later, and a couple of miles away, ambulance staff discovered the bodies of 39 adults inside the container on the Waterglade Industrial Park. News that the dead are all from China will bring back memories of another incident nearly 20 years ago, when 58 Chinese immigrants were found suffocated inside a lorry in Dover. It took months for some of them to be identified. Since then, checks at our major ports have increased, but critics say quieter ports like Purfleet can still be vulnerable.
There is simply not enough being done in terms of security, in terms of the protection of vehicles across Europe. We need to be working far more with the Europeans, but there lies an issue in terms of Brexit. How close we can influence some of the things that need to be done to try and stop these things from happening.
That is just one area that's now being considered. Police are stressing these are very early days, the start of a long, complex, international investigation. John Kay, BBC News, Essex.
Well, thanks to John. Let us turn now to my colleague Anna Holligan. She's in Zeebrugge, which is a Belgian port. Good to have you with us, Anna. What's the latest you're hearing where you are?
Well, this is just a tiny section of what is a sprawling port, and approximately 4,000 containers travel from here in Zeebrugge over to the UK every single day, containing things like cars and natural gases. But it's also a hotspot for people smuggling. And in fact, in the last few minutes, we've just heard reports another group of migrants have been detained trying to climb into a compound owned by one trucking company. It's such an issue here. The UK has 2 border force teams permanently based here at the port of Zeebrugge. Now, in terms of security here at the harbour master told the BBC that trucks coming into the port are filmed, the driver identified. If they have canvas tops, then they use CO2 scanners, detectors to see if there's anyone inside. But that isn't something that's done as standard practice with these sealed containers. And of course, these 39 people were inside a refrigerated, sealed container, which explains why it was impossible for them to escape. The local mayor told the BBC they pick up an average of 50 migrants every month trying to use this crossing. So it's no surprise that this is where they came from. But for the prosecutor now, the focus is on 3 key questions. First of all, where did this trailer, this container, start its journey? What were its movements here in Belgium? So was there an opportunity for these people to board here? And secondly, how did they manage to travel over to the UK, these 39 people hidden inside that trailer?
Anna, thanks so much speaking to us from Zeebrugge. Let me turn now, however, to my colleague Robin Brandt. He is our China correspondent joining us from Shanghai right now. Great to have you with us, Robin, on Global. What, if anything, has China said?
Well, most of the reaction is coming from the embassy in London. What we've seen here from state-run media is talk of shock at what has been revealed this afternoon. I think what is significant is the fact that this is being reported by some parts of China's state-run media here domestically. I mean, that alone tells you that the censors have decided in this country, where pretty much all media is controlled by the government, that they do want to report it. What we've had so far is talk of shock here, some discussion online by Chinese people about, why it's happened again. They're pointed to that incident in 2000 and also the cockle pickers in 2004. Most of the reaction, though, is coming from the embassy in London. We know that Chinese embassy staff have gone to Essex to assist in the process of trying to work out who these people are as well. I suspect we may hear more from China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs perhaps on Friday.
Robin, thank you so much speaking to us from Shanghai. We're going to be getting more on this story, speaking to our Asia Pacific regional editor also about why some Chinese people may feel the need to make this dangerous journey. A court in Bangladesh has sentenced 16 people to death for the murder of a female student who was set on fire after accusing her head teacher of sexual harassment. The murder of Nusrat Jahan Rafi in April shocked the country and led to a series of protests demanding justice. From Dhaka, our correspondent Akbar Hussain reports.
The convicted murderers were taken away from the court in one of the fastest trials in the country's history. Among them the headmaster, 2 teachers, 2 local politicians and 2 female classmates of the murdered girl. The murder of Nusrat Jahan Rafi shocked the nation. She was set on fire on the roof of her school after she had reported the headmaster for touching her inappropriately. The headmaster, Sirajud-Dowla, who had been arrested for sexual harassment, apparently ordered her death from his prison cell. The police said that it was supposed to look like a suicide, but Nusrat escaped and managed to make a statement to her brother before she died.
The trial was completed really fast. I want to thank our media. Our Prime Minister learned about it because of the hard work. Police have been looking after us all this time.
Nusrat's case has sparked mass protest in the country where victims of sexual assault rarely go public. Nusrat's family has been placed under police protection. Akbar Hussain, BBC News, Feni in Bangladesh.
Let's take a look now at the day's other main global news. US Republicans, they stormed a high-security impeachment inquiry into US President Donald Trump, forcing a witness to delay her testimony by 5 hours. The Republicans chanted, "Let us in," as they forced their way into that hearing. Earlier this week, Mr. Trump urged Republicans to get tough and fight for him. People have gathered to pay their respects to the US Democratic Congressman Elijah Cummings, who died last week. His body will lie in state in the US Capitol. Mr. Cummings, who was heavily involved with the Trump impeachment inquiry, was 68 years old. The European Parliament has awarded the Sakharov Human Rights Prize to the jailed Chinese Uyghur activist Ilham Tohti. The former economics professor at a Beijing university was sentenced to life in prison back in 2014 on the charge of separatism for his activism in favour of China's Uyghur Muslim minority. And you might have heard of the rat race. Have you heard about the rat drive? Scientists in America have been monitoring these rodents driving cars. Researchers investigating stress levels say rats drove themselves were less stressed than the backseat drivers being controlled by scientists. I want to return now to our main story, and that is that British police believe that 39 people found dead in a container on the back of a lorry on Wednesday were Chinese nationals. With me is Celia Hatton, our Asia Pacific regional editor. Good to have you with us, Celia. So there's so many questions, really. We were getting an update on some of the latest on the investigations from some of our colleagues in Belgium and also in Shanghai. But I suppose this is not the first case that we've heard of in the UK when it comes to Chinese nationals trying to get into the country irregularly.
Exactly. So, of course, we don't know the motivations behind the reasons why those 39 people boarded that truck. But those routes, the routes from through Belgium into the UK, have been traced before by people who study people smuggling networks. And the fact that these people were Chinese nationals really doesn't come as a surprise for those who are experts in this field, because we know that around 100,000 people are smuggled out of China every year. The US State Department has criticized Beijing for failing to do more to stop these, to crack down on these smuggling networks. Now, these are well-organized crime gangs who are thought to go and really promise desperate people in China who are looking for work, promise them good jobs, promise them work overseas, promise to get them documents, forged documents often. And we know that sometimes, or often, that these people travel overland through Russia, through the Balkans, into the EU, and then often into the UK.
And I think we were hearing also from Anna Holligan in an earlier report that the Belgian officials were really surprised that there was Chinese nationals. And I think for most of our viewers, it's so far away. We're talking like 8,000 kilometres to make that journey, and why the UK might be a destination. Do we know?
It is far away. And also, you know, it's been pointed out that China is the world's second largest economy. Why would people need to leave China? Surely they can find employment within China. But we've got to keep in mind the Chinese economy is in a sustained downturn, and that's exacerbated by this US-China trade war we talk about a lot. China's poorest people are really feeling the brunt of that trade war, and so they're looking elsewhere. Now, when they look elsewhere, they might want to look elsewhere for employment. Well, unskilled laborers don't have a lot of options. So if a people smuggler comes to them to say, look, I can find you work overseas, in the UK, there are already many entrenched Chinese communities that might be able to help those people find work. So these organized crime gangs, these networks between China and the UK are already established.
And I would imagine, like we often hear, perhaps more of the stories of Afghan migrants or Syrian migrants, that there would be a cash outlay at the beginning as well for people to make that trip, perhaps the whole family, depending on that person.
Exactly. So what we understand is that organized crime gangs will charge around $50,000 for fake documents and for transportation to a country. The U.S. State Department says that Chinese people are smuggled to around 60 countries around the world, and they're employed in very low-wage jobs. Now, in the UK, that often means that they're working for around $3 an hour, primarily in jobs that involve food processing or farming. So The UK has said that it wants to stop this. The United States has really called out China on this. And really it comes down to Beijing wanting to stamp out this kind of people smuggling. But it is very lucrative. There are some who say that people smuggling brings in as much money as drug trafficking.
Celia Haddon, very interesting. Thank you for giving us some context and analysis on this, our top story. Also, still to come on Global Today, the first TV interview with an Egyptian whistleblower whose viral video sparked rare anti-government protests.
One, two. Be there, on the edge of your chair, for an event without precedent, the pinnacle of human achievement. Be there to see the alliance of art, music, fashion, and science. See a futuristic festival filled with ideas new and radical, performances magical, in a 6-month-long spectacle. This you can't afford to miss. It's the best of humankind in the greatest show of our time.
The world needs to know Brazil by Brazil. One of the largest agricultural producers in the world, Brazil feeds 1.2 billion people and uses only 7.8% of its land for farming. Brazil is one of the main exporters of sugarcane, coffee beans, orange juice, soy, beef, and chicken. This is only possible through technology, agricultural research, and incentives for production, which will amount to $53 billion this year. Meet a new Brazil, modern and productive. Meet Brazil by Brazil.
Welcome back to Global. BBC Arabic has gained the first TV interview with an Egyptian whistleblower whose viral videos have sparked rare anti-government protests. Businessman, actor Muhammad Ali has accused President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and others in his circle of widespread corruption. BBC Arabic's Rasha Kandil went to Spain, where Ali now lives, to find out more.
Last month in Egypt, scenes that would have been unthinkable just a few weeks before. Hundreds of people took to the streets, including the iconic Tahrir Square, to demand the removal of strongman President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. The spark for the protests came from an unlikely source: this Egyptian actor and businessman based in Barcelona. Muhammad Ali worked as a contractor for the Egyptian army for 15 years, making millions of dollars in the process. But last month, he began releasing Facebook videos saying that he was owed millions by the Egyptian government and accusing President Sisi of corruption on a massive scale. The videos struck a nerve, racking up millions of views and making him the unlikely leader of a new protest movement. He says he's now one of Egypt's most wanted men. Even though he's now in Barcelona, Muhammad Ali still fears for his own safety. He says that he cannot walk around the streets here in daylight. But he agreed to give us his first TV interview to explain about his campaign and the circumstances he lives under now.
When I began working with the army, I didn't know there was corruption. When did I begin to realize there was corruption? When Abdel Fattah al-Sisi became the defense minister.
Mr. Ali has accused President Sisi of building opulent palaces for himself and his family using Egyptian state funds. Sisi himself responded, saying the allegations were slanderous and untrue.
Do you think when you lie, I get scared? Yes, I am building presidential palaces and I will build more. But I don't build them for me, they are for Egypt.
But the protests have come with a price. Amnesty International estimates that around 2,300 people, including children, were arrested in the wake of the protests that Ali sparked. Mr. Mohammed, you're safe here in Barcelona, and other people are facing jail. They're facing targeting in the streets in Cairo. So how do you feel? What's your responsibility on this?
I'm very, very sad about this. But I want to do something about it. And in fact, it makes me want to do more and complete this mission. I never thought it would reach this point. I don't know what to do.
So will you stop here?
No. If I stop now, he'll finish them off. He'll finish off future generations. We can't ever give up. We started this journey, now we have to finish it.
Muhammad Ali continues to post videos almost daily. He knows that for as long as millions of Egyptians keep watching, he will be a thorn in the establishment's side. Rasha Kandil, BBC News, Barcelona.
Thanks to Rasha. Now, Egypt is one of a number of countries experiencing upheaval as people take to the streets. Jacqueline van Stekelenburg is a professor of sociology at VU University in Amsterdam and an expert in the dynamics of protest movements, including how social media has or has not influenced them. And she joins me now. Great to have you with us. There appears, and I think maybe our listeners might feel this as well, that there's been like a spike in protests around the world. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is. In fact, we see at the moment, starting as of 2008, 2009, a similar amount of protests as in the Roaring 60s.
Huh. Why do you think that is?
Well, in 2008, 2009, it was in all likelihood caused by the financial crisis. There were a lot of governments taking austerity measures, and, well, we as citizens reacted to that. But at the same time, we could see like a wave of democratization protests, like the Arab Spring, but also in Iran. So there were similar protests and similar protest waves at the same time with different dynamics and different goals.
So I wonder, with social media, because you mentioned 2008, 2009, that's really when we began to see an explosion of social media. Now, you know, the difficulty now sometimes can be to verify the pictures and where they're from, whether they're a protest that's happening now or from something previously. What do you think the role it has played?
Well, I think that if you have a look at social media, we know that both consensus mobilization and action mobilization, so sharing the grievances and sharing the message of a protest coming up, is easier, cheaper, and also able to reach a large group at the same time. So in that sense, you might think that, oh, it's all because of social media. But then it is important to keep in mind that in the 60s, we had a large spike of protests. But one thing is for sure, no social media those days. So it's, in my view, not good to say it is because of the social media.
Very interesting. You know, we've been talking a lot on Global over these months, whether it's Hong Kong, climate change, more recently Lebanon, and now Chile as well. Is there anything with the protest this week that has struck you in particular?
Well, a lot of journalists ask me, is there something global going on? I think it's not like that. It's not like in the 2008 and 2009 when we had the financial global crisis. But now it seems more that there are different protesters and they seem to inspire each other and they seem to kind of provide the message, hey, we can do that too. So what we see now is that there are protests all over the world spiking up. And they are rooted in the classic social cleavages of the country where they take place. So, for instance, inequality in Chile, but it's more autonomy in Catalonia and as well as in Hong Kong. So we see more protests and we see protesters inspiring each other. But the cause of the protests, so what makes people angry, is definitely rooted in the social cleavages of the country.
Social cleavages of the country. Well, we'll keep that in mind as we continue to cover the various protests. Of course, you brought up Catalonia as well, which is another of the stories. It does really feel like every day there's a number of countries that we're following where people have taken to the streets. A lot more young people and women that have got involved rather than some previous years.
Yes, that's correct. In fact, we studied the climate strikers, the Friday for Future strikes, and we found something really interesting. First of all, indeed, there are many young people taking to the streets, but mainly young women. And we asked them why. Why is it? And what we found out is that they see Greta as a role model, and they is the women, less so for the men. So it's the women who see Greta as a role model. They identify with her, they get inspired by her, and the idea, hey, if she can do it, I can do it too. And this dynamic, this mechanism, works especially for young women.
Thank you so much for speaking to us. Good to have your thoughts from Amsterdam. That is Jacqueline van Stekelenburg, who's taking a look at the dynamics and mobilisation of protests around the world.
Thank you.
Stay with us. In a few minutes' time, we're going to continue talking about the story which has been our top story today. British police say 39 people found dead in the back of a lorry in England were Chinese nationals. We'll be getting Chinese reaction to this terrible tragedy. And a dictator's final journey. Will the exhumation of Spain's General Franco bring the ghosts of its civil war to rest? We're going to be speaking to a guest who has studied this in depth, taking a look back at the 44 years since his death. Don't forget, you can get in touch with me and the rest of the team on Twitter. I'm on @BBC Nuala. Stay watching Global.
Hello, thanks for joining me. Let's get a check on the weather across Europe now. And in the last 24 hours, the weather's been awful across around the Pyrenees here, France, Italy as well. This area of low pressure spinning around, bringing tremendous amounts of rainfall in a short space of time. That's led to some dramatic scenes of flooding across this part of the world, locally, of course. But the weather improves dramatically by the time we get to Friday. The sun should be out. The other side of the Mediterranean, the weather's absolutely fine. And in fact, it's warm across the Balkans. That warmth's been persistent here for quite some time, spreading all the way into eastern areas of Europe. But I think we need the much drier weather across this part of the world. You can see the sun's back out around the Pyrenees and southern parts of France as well, but not in the British Isles. Some heavy rain, very heavy rain, potentially leading to flooding as well, sweeping through. This a conveyor belt of rainfall is going to be bringing rainfall to the same place for a couple of days around the UK. So that means some nasty weather. But the rest of Europe, from pretty much Bordeaux towards Warsaw, is looking sunny and very, very warm indeed, well above the average for at the time of the year. But in London, it remains cool. Temperatures dropping, if anything, over the coming days. The same goes for France as well. Elsewhere, look at that, a hint of winter on the way for Moscow next week. Bye-bye.
Now showing on BBC Real.
やはり1600年を超える昔から単なるお墓ではなくてですね、その当時の政治権力とかそういったものを表すモニュメントであった。そういったところからですね、いろいろな想像が働くことができますので。
古墳っている白骨をしてないっていうものもあるので、中に何が入っているのかわからない。なので大きな古墳に関しては一番偉い人、その当時の一番偉い人、王様でしょうね。王様だと考えられています。
Watch more stories like this at bbc.com/real.
It's festive season in India, time for brisk business. But with rising unemployment, people's purchasing power has taken a hit. So how can we revive India's growth story? Join me, Devina Gupta, on Work Life India on BBC World News.
What would a future driven by women look like? We bring you highlights from our event featuring women at the cutting edge of science, arts, technology, business and education. Join us and take a glimpse into the female future on 100 Women Extra on BBC World News.
This summer, a second giant Airbus plane was intentionally sunk off the coast of Turkey. Authorities say it's an attraction for divers and it will aid the marine ecosystem. We're here off the Aegean coast to see if a big chunk of metal on the bottom of the ocean can really aid underwater life. Join me, Mike Corey, this weekend on BBC World News.
Police say 8 women and 31 men found dead in a lorry in the UK were Chinese nationals. The refrigerated container arrived in the east of England from Belgium, where prosecutors have also opened an investigation. Detectives have been given an additional 24 hours to question the driver on suspicion of murder. Also on Global today, 16 people are sentenced to death for the murder of a student in Bangladesh. They were convicted after Nusrat Jahan Rafi was set on fire for accusing her teacher of sexual harassment. And exhuming the remains of a dictator, the controversial reburial of General Franco in Spain. This is Global. Police say 39 people found dead inside a refrigerated lorry in Essex in the east of England are believed to have been Chinese nationals. Detectives have been given an additional 24 hours to question the driver of the lorry, who's been arrested on suspicion of murder. Gulwali Pasarlea is a former Afghan refugee who, like the 39 people found dead, came to the UK in the back of a refrigerated lorry.
The truck, the refrigerated lorry was kind of shown to us. We were told by the smuggler there's bananas in the truck. He brought bananas with him. We knew it was a refrigerator. I was tired of that place, but I didn't know actually how risky that would be. I knew it was risky, but I did not understood the extent of if the driver had put on the freezer, we would have been killed on the last leg of our journey. So this could have been my fate as those innocent souls. They lost their lives.
So he didn't turn on the refrigeration. We still don't know all the details with this particular story of the Chinese nationals. But you were with, I imagine, older men or women.
There was
you were
7
just
of us,
12.
yeah.
Did they know? Did they think about this could turn on? Did they just talk me through kind of the mindset of deciding to get into a truck that could become refrigerated?
So I remember that evening when we went to the lorry parking, we run from the police. We were trying to hide from the police. It was raining, it was muddy, and I was so tired of that place because of the miserable conditions and also being arrested daily. It was pure humiliation. And when the smuggler came with bananas in his hand and he said who was willing to go, usually he will come and say such people come. He will have a plan and he will know who is going. But this time he came and he asked who is willing to go. Almost everyone said no, and I was like, well, I had enough of this place and I'm going to give it a try and risk it. But again, as I said, I did not know the implications of what I was kind of getting myself into. And because of my bravery and like being courageous to actually take on the offer, 6 other people were persuaded. And they said, look, this kid is going, why can't you? So they came with me. I remember actually they went on top of my shoulders to the lorry and then again on my shoulders to the truck so that I could clean the place behind me. And the driver opened it in the morning, he didn't see us. Then the French police opened it, didn't see us. The British police opened it, so we were just very, very lucky. And then again, when we were in there, we were really worried because we thought if the driver does put on the freezer, then it will be very hard for people outside to hear us. And if he abandons the truck somewhere, then that's the end. So we had these thoughts in our head, but we were hopeful and kind of keeping the faith that things was happening for a reason. We go through, the lorry was in the ferry, and Again, if the driver had put on the freezer, we had no way of getting out. It was locked from outside.
Thanks so much to Gulwali for speaking to me. What a story. He was just 12 years of age when he made that trip. Well, with me now is Kerry Allen, who's the BBC's China media analyst. And you've been looking at what some of the reaction in China has been, which is fascinating. Let's go through some of it. Perhaps if we start with what Chinese media has said so far.
Yeah, well, they've been very careful about what they're saying. At the moment, they're just accrediting British media as saying that these are Chinese nationals. They've not verified this themselves. They've not given any details about the victims. If they do know that they're Chinese, they're absolutely accrediting just Chinese media. There's only been, literally one word that's been coming out of official media at all, and that is shock. It's the newspaper, the Global Times, and but yeah, it's got people talking today because nobody expected this.
Not much word from officials so far.
Well, the embassy staff in the UK have said that they're on their way to the scene to try and verify the situation. But normally there might be a bulletin on TV, some further detail in China. But the Foreign Ministry statement would have been one of the outlets to do this, and that had already passed today. And also there's a TV show in the evening that everybody sits down and watch called Xinwen Lianbo, or News Hookup. And the timing was too close. So I think if there is an announcement, it will probably be tomorrow.
You take a look at Sina Weibo, which is a microblogging site, I suppose, like Chinese Twitter. What are people saying on there?
Well, first, the scale of the reaction. I mean, as soon as it was announced that the British media had said that these were Chinese nationals, tens of thousands of people were commenting. I've seen more than 85,000 social media comments coming in. And a lot of them are just questions, people saying, how could this happen? Is it smuggling? Is it human trafficking? Are the government going to say anything about this? And one of the other lines that's been coming out is because of what's been going on in Hong Kong, because of the protests that have been taking place now over a matter of months, concerned that it might be Hong Kong nationals who are frightened for their lives and have fled to the UK. We have absolutely no way of knowing at the moment. These are all just pure speculation, pure rumours. But yeah, questions more than anything. People are saying, how could this have happened?
Yes, and I think a lot of people are asking that question as well, so I can imagine when it's close to home and that it is nationals from China. Well, we'll wait and see if we get more details. Carrie Ann, thank you very much. The UK's Metropolitan Police is working with Facebook to try and stop terrorists live streaming their attacks on social media. The force has started recording their counter-terrorism training exercises with body cameras so it can further develop its artificial intelligence software. Now, it's hoped that this will enable Facebook to identify such videos much more quickly. Sarah Corker has this report.
Firearms officers simulate a terrorist attack. The scenario, multiple gunmen on the loose in a disused building. The Metropolitan Police regularly practice their counter-terrorism response, and the body cameras recording these images have been supplied by Facebook.
Subject down, red jumper.
Hundreds of people work in Facebook's safety and security team, and it's based here in London. And over the past 2 years, 26 million posts from global terror groups have been removed. And Facebook uses artificial intelligence to spot extreme content. This is how the technology works, identifying people and objects. But the company was criticised for failing to prevent videos of the New Zealand mosque shootings from being widely shared.
The Christchurch attack went more viral than any one piece of terrorist content I've ever seen, and I analyze terrorist content every single day. But what we also realized was that because it started on Facebook Live, that perhaps our tooling wasn't as good as it could be about proactively detecting what might be first-person shooter content.
Social media platforms are under increasing pressure to stem the flow of violence and hate online. The Home Office now plans to share this footage with other technology companies. Sarah Corker, BBC News.
Well, let's turn to something that has taken 10 years to put together. Exhibition is finally opening at the Louvre in Paris to mark 500 years since Leonardo da Vinci's death. Lucy Williamson went to have a look at the brand new ways of looking at one of the world's most famous paintings.
Scientist or painter? Leonardo da Vinci is often seen as a universal genius, but this exhibition suggests his insatiable curiosity was all about creating the perfect image. And it offers a new scientific way of looking at his paintings too, with a specially created virtual reality experience around his most famous work, the Mona Lisa. Da Vinci spent the last few years of his life in France, and the Louvre already owns 5 of his paintings, including the Mona Lisa, more than any other institution in the world. They've used new technology to reveal the different layers of his key works, some of which took 15 years to create.
he changed the form of the composition, but also the iconography of the composition. So without these scientific investigation, we won't be able to understand the meaning and also the evolution of each painting of Leonardo.
The Queen has lent 24 pictures from the royal collection, including these studies of plants. But other requests have proved harder to come by. Lending a Leonardo, the museum admits, is no small favour. The fact this exhibition is taking place in Paris has ruffled a few feathers in Rome. Leonardo was Italian, one junior minister said. He only died in France. Both countries are planning major events this year to mark the anniversary, and not everyone has agreed on where the artworks should be shown. It took an Italian court to rule that Vitruvian Man, one of the most famous drawings in the world, could be sent to France. A cultural heritage group had objected that it was too fragile.
Italy in 2015 made a wonderful exhibition on Leonardo da Vinci, and we were the only country in the world to send 3 paintings by Leonardo da Vinci. We were the most generous lender to their exhibition, and now they help us, lending us the Vitruvian Man.
Over 200,000 tickets have been sold before opening, and the Louvre is expecting more than 500,000 visitors in total. Drawn to understand the secrets of the artist who painted this enigmatic smile. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, Paris.
Quite something, huh? Also still to come on Global Today. Spain's Prime Minister says the exhumation of dictator General Franco from a civil war memorial has brought an end to a moral affront to the nation.
1, 2. Be there, on the edge of your chair, for an event without precedent, the pinnacle of human achievement. Be there to see the alliance of art, music, fashion, and science. See a futuristic festival filled with ideas new and radical, performances magical, in a 6-month-long spectacle. This you can't afford to miss. It's the best of humankind in the greatest show of our time.
This December, make the heroes of Europe, Asia, and Africa, the Middle East, Oceania, and the Americas feel welcome to a stage made for legends. Make an entrance and make some noise as they compete for the honor of becoming the world's best. See the excitement and you'll be sure to say, I want to be there. For this FIFA Club World Cup, make Qatar your goal.
The world needs to know Brazil by Brazil. One of the main oil-producing countries, Brazil dominates the exploration in deep waters and offers a number of opportunities in this field. The country presents the world's biggest infrastructure concession program, with projects amounting to over $50 billion. The goal is to diversify the transportation network, expanding and modernizing railways, waterways, ports, and airports. Meet a new Brazil, full of opportunities. Meet Brazil by Brazil.
What would a future driven by women look like? We bring you highlights from our event featuring women at the cutting edge of science, arts, technology, business, and education. Join us and take a glimpse into the female future on 100 Women Extra on BBC World News.
Welcome back to Global. Let's turn to Bosnia. It is now a major route into the European Union. There are 45,000 refugees that have arrived in the country since the beginning of 2018. Thousands of those are at risk of freezing to death because they haven't been given proper accommodation. And aid agencies say that with winter coming, a humanitarian catastrophe is just weeks away. Jim McKenzie brings us this report.
All night, hundreds of migrants and refugees queue outside this camp. They beg to be let in, but it's full.
How many nights have you been outside?
4 or 5 days outside.
Like thousands, this 14-year-old will have to sleep on the streets. Bosnia has become a bottleneck for migrants trying to get into the EU. Thousands make their way from Syria, Afghanistan and Pakistan, and many get stuck, unable to cross the Croatian border.
It's been set up like somebody took the marbles and just threw them down.
4 months ago, the government set up this unofficial camp on an old chemical dumping ground surrounded by landmines. UN inspectors say it's not fit for humans.
So you have to sleep on the floor?
Yes. 1 month this camp, this room. 1 month.
You've slept here for 1 month? Gosh.
The camp has no running water, sanitation or electricity and no healthcare. Disease is rife.
We don't even have a medicine to give it to them. We don't. Yeah.
You've run out of medicine?
Yeah. We can't treat them.
With winter coming, conditions are getting worse.
Do you have enough clothes to keep warm?
Not really.
Hosrat fled Afghanistan after the Taliban killed his family.
I don't know what's going to happen in winter. I'm very worried by it. I've been to the Red Cross and I told them I want to deport myself. It's better to die in Afghanistan.
The winters are tough here, and so the risk is really, if we don't have these beds, that people will die because of the cold. If that is not addressed, then we will have a humanitarian catastrophe here, not in a few months' time, but in a few weeks' time.
Back on the streets, we're taken to a series of disused buildings where hundreds sleep.
What is this? What is this? They've all got scabies.
This summer, the European Union gave Bosnia £10 million to set up new centres for migrants, but the government is yet to allocate new sites.
2 days, 3 days, no food. Seeing that makes you realise the scale of the problem, that there are hundreds, thousands of people in this part of the country that will not have a bed for the foreseeable future.
100 kilometres away, we film police kicking migrants off a bus heading for the camps.
Who's told you to take them off the bus?
They're not obliged to answer you for anything.
The order has come from local government, which is trying to stop people reaching the camps.
Do you know where you are? These people don't know where they are, they don't know what's just happened to them. We're now on the side of a road, and they're going to have to spend the night here.
Come morning, they'll have to walk to get here.
Water, water. Lot of water. It's a hole there. You don't need a new tent, you need to go from here. If you ask me to sleep here 1 night, I think that would be my worst nightmare. This is not the place for humans. Look at them.
The Bosnian government has refused to answer our questions, and aid agencies say unless new beds are found imminently, people will die. G. Mackenzie, BBC News.
Let's turn to Spain now. The remains of the Spanish dictator Francisco Franco have been exhumed from a tomb in the Valley of the Fallen memorial complex that he constructed nearly 80 years ago to commemorate the civil war of the 30s. They're being reburied alongside his family in a cemetery near Madrid. The socialist government says Spain should not continue to glorify a fascist leader. Our correspondent Guy Hedgecoe reports.
The remains of Francisco Franco, removed by members of his family from his final resting place. The Valley of the Fallen, a controversial site. Built by Franco himself using Republican prisoners between 1940 and 1959, many feel it glorifies his legacy. Franco came to power in 1939 after defeating the leftist Republican government in the Civil War. He carried out reprisals after the conflict, killing tens of thousands of Spaniards. Under his so-called national Catholic ideology, political and social freedoms were repressed, and many Spaniards were driven into exile. He died in 1975 and was buried in the Catholic Basilica at the Valley of the Fallen with state honours. After his death, the country made the transition to democracy, but the issue of Franco's legacy has been a sensitive one. While Franco had his supporters, the new socialist government, which took office last year, made the exhumation a priority. It overcame a legal challenge from the Franco family, which opposed the process.
I feel rage seeing that it's been used as propaganda and publicity for the very next elections.
Franco's remains have been flown by helicopter to a cemetery on the outskirts of Madrid, where they will be reburied in a family plot later today. Guy Hedgecoe, BBC News, Madrid.
Let us turn to Thailand now. Women are not allowed to be ordained as monks in the country, but some women have instead been ordained abroad and have then returned to the country to live as female monks. It began with the Venerable Dhammananda, who founded a temple and was the first woman in Thai history to be ordained as a female monk. She's been celebrated as a member of the BBC 100 Women list this year.
My ordained name is Dhammananda, and I live here with 14 other female monks. But I have also been called the rebel monk because some of my fellow male monks, the ones with authority, do not want to recognize me as one of them. This is supposed to be blessed. Take it as medicine. Thank you. ความรู้สึกนี่ลึกซึ้งนะบางทีจะอธิบายถึงสีม่วงของดอก They were like monks. Being female monk, women, that is half of the world's population, do have access to you in a much more friendly way than the male monks. The future is in our hand. I mean, the men, the guidance of the men have led us to so much problems as it is. It's about time that women should come up with social solution, handling the situation completely different from the way the men handle.
One of our BBC's 100 Women will stay with us in the next few minutes on Global. We'll return to our top story as British police say that 39 people that were found dead in the back of a lorry in England were Chinese nationals. We're going to be getting Chinese reaction to this terrible tragedy. Stay with us.